Hey everybody, welcome into the Week 10 edition of Start Sit here on Between the 20s. As always, I'm Bryce, joined by Amer and Mike. Amer, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Halfway through the season, we're into this home stretch, almost at the playoffs, almost the biggest time of the fantasy football year. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. We have a good matchup tonight between the Raiders and the Chargers. I mean, this Charger team is a very intriguing team, 4-5, but beat the Packers last week. Their defense is top 10 so far in the NFL. Very, very intrigued by this team. So interesting to see what happens when they visit the black hole tonight. Yeah.
Definitely. We have a couple of Chargers here to talk about today. With that in mind, just a quick PSA for those of you who haven't seen the show. This is going to work as we get listener questions on guys to start this week. And we're going to answer them, give our takes for 6 different questions this week. Anyone that's on Thursday night, we've given you answers already, but still want to get our takes out there so we can review them after the fact and give you some standings that we're going to start updating next week for everybody. See who the best of our analysts are up here, or experts and analysts, as we joke around.
And if you haven't seen the show before, I don't know how thick the rock is that you live under. This is just, it's really making the waves, I think, all around the One Button Studio for sure. I'd say.
Oh yeah. We're the toast of the town here in Chicago.
At the University of Chicago.
But we'll get started. We have 6 questions to go over, a couple different Thursday nighters. We'll point out some of the guys, some matchups that we like. We'll let you know who our takes are. As always, please let us know after the show what you think of our takes, as always. So please comment, DMs, anything like that. We'll remind you that at the end too. But we'll start here with a 12-team PPR league, and we're looking at a flex spot. David Montgomery, my guy. I love David Montgomery. You guys all know that if you've seen the show before. He's going up against a bad Detroit team here in Chicago on Sunday. Or DJ Moore and the upstart Panthers going to Green Bay in the cold. Mike, who do you like here?
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say it, I have to say that Bryce has a good take on David Montgomery.
Finally.
At least this week. Amer and I were talking today. I realized David Montgomery is a top 20 running back, as in he's in the 20th spot, which I don't know if necessarily warranted the hype that B gave him prior to the start of the season. I'm still not jumping on the hype train there.
Mike and his hype train.
But I do have to say that the Lions' defense is the second worst in the NFL in terms of yards per game. The Packers actually are deceiving in that their defense is also pretty bad. But I really think that the Lions are just on that other poor tier. And the Packers are going to be very hungry coming off that loss to the aforementioned Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. David Montgomery's had 2 great weeks back-to-back. He's getting a lot of touches, actually. And it really looks like, looking at the numbers for Tariq Cohen, that David Montgomery's really taken over this backfield in Chicago. They're going to need him because their passing game has been really rough. Of course, Mitch Trubisky is having a really, really tough season so far. So David Montgomery, I think, is in line for another big workload. Divisional matchup. This is going to be a tough game. But yeah, David Montgomery's my guy.
I'm also taking David Montgomery, a trifecta, and Q Mike.
Sweep!
All 3 of us taking David Montgomery here. We talk about guaranteed touches. I love that term. I love guaranteed touches. Taking the top running back here in Chicago. Tariq Cohen's role has been reduced to just about receiver,
Yeah.
And Mike Davis has been nowhere to be found since week 3. Last 2 weeks, David Montgomery has had at least 3 receptions, so PPR, that's a little bit of a floor. And last week, yes, rough efficiency-wise, but he was playing the top running defense in the league in Philadelphia. Still found the end zone twice. I think it's going to continue on a Bears team that cannot throw the ball. Can't really move the ball without David Montgomery. So I like him against Chicago. DJ Moore is going to be a rough game for him. I think he always has a floor of 5-6 catches at a minimum. But Jair Alexander, one of the premier cornerbacks, is going to be on him for the Green Bay Packers this week. That's going to limit his ceiling. Look for Curtis Samuel, actually, if you have him on your bench and you need some stuff. I like Curtis Samuel this week to do something cool.
All right.
Second question. We have a 10-team standard, but this actually doesn't matter all that much for scoring because it's a quarterback's question. We love quarterbacks questions here. Kyler Murray, the rookie sensation out in the desert in Arizona, going up in Tampa Bay against the questionable Tampa Bay secondary. Or tonight, Thursday night, all reliable old man Philip Rivers against the Oakland Raiders in, as Mike said, the black hole. Amer, who do you like?
I'm going to roll with the young sensation Kyler Murray this week. This Tampa Bay team, not good. This Arizona defense, also not good. This game is one of the highest betting over-unders of the week. So this is going to be a shootout. Of course, like I said, Tampa Bay, bad defense. Arizona, bad defense. Arizona just let Jimmy G throw 4 touchdowns on them. So look for big games from Jameis Winston and Kyler Murray. And in this case, I'm taking Kyler Murray over Phillip Rivers just because of the game script. I think it's going to be like I said, high-scoring game. And Kyler Murray also gives you that floor with his rushing attempts as well. So Kyler Murray over Phillip Rivers this week.
I mean, as bad as that Buccaneers defense is, the Raiders defense, passing-wise, is worse. The Buccaneers, 6th worst in terms of passing yards per game. The Raiders, 4th worst. But
big difference
in the actual players at the quarterback position. Remember, matchups is only one half of it. You got to get the second part of the equation, and that's the players themselves. Some people have it the wrong way, the other way, where they value player more than the matchup to, I think, too crazy of a degree. But here, I do think that Kyler just gives you more of an electric offense as opposed to Phillip Rivers. I mean, their disparity in quarterback in just fantasy performance so far this year was quite large.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I'm going to go with Kyler Murray and that Cliff Kingsbury offense. Yeah.
I'm going to quote Mike. Kyler Murray, electric. But I, too, am also taking Kyler Murray here. He threw for multiple touchdowns against a fantastic 49er defense last week. It's actually the first time that he found the end zone since Week 6 against Atlanta, which is another brutal defense. I think the trend's going to continue. He did rush the ball 5 times. He looked pretty good. They only threw the ball 24 times as well. This game against Tampa Bay is more likely going to be a shootout. He'll probably throw the ball even more than that. I'm expecting 300 yards from him, all-purpose anyway, with ideally multiple touchdowns. Again, I think he's going to have a good week. Yes, Rivers might have a higher floor, but Murray, I think, certainly is going to be a better player this week overall. And then from 12 teams, we went to 10 teams, and now all the way down to the 8-team leagues, our very top-heavy leagues that we like to talk about. 8-team half PPR, so this is the mid-tier of everything else. We're looking at a flex question, I assume, because we have 2 running backs and a receiver. Austin Ekeler tonight in Oakland for the Los Angeles Chargers. David Johnson is back or should be back. Another Arizona Cardinal we just talked about should be back.
100%.
But Kenyon Drake looked really good last week. What's that going to do? And finally, the receiver in the equation, the always reliable John Brown for Josh Allen in Buffalo, going up against the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Mike, who do you like and why?
I mean, before even answering this question, I'm going to ask you guys your opinion on Mr. Ekeler. I mean, I think when Melvin Gordon originally came back, we expected more of Gordon than we currently have seen. Ekeler has been a top-performing fantasy asset still for these past few weeks. How do you guys feel about Ekeler just in general?
I mean, Eckler's not really getting the goal line work that you really want. Last week, Melvin Gordon got 2 carries inside the 1-yard line and cashed them both in for a touchdown. And although Ekeler has been a more efficient runner, he had 12 for 70-something last week, which is really efficient, especially when compared to Melvin Gordon. But with Austin Ekeler kind of losing out those red zone touches and that goal line work, I think it's kind of tough to start him this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree. I definitely agree that you're not going to get the same top 5 fantasy performance out of Ekeler that you saw in the first few weeks before the return of Melvin Gordon. And so then I think you can kind of rule him out of this question. I do have to say, though, it's very hard to go difficult with these 3 choices. They're all playing very poor defenses, except maybe Cleveland has an argument for being okay, and that's saying a lot for the fact that the Bucks and the Raiders,
Denzel Ward on them.
The Bucks and the Raiders are just that bad. And then just David Johnson thing, it really depends. If Monitor, get locked in on this situation because he says he's 100%. I don't necessarily know if that's true. I checked out the most reliable source other than us on fantasy, which is Reddit, and the people were saying that David Johnson's at 100% and doubting it a little bit. There's a little bit of doubt going on there. Maybe it's just a decoy. Maybe in reality, oh, look who it is. They're going to Kenyon Drake again. So it's really a tough question to answer. It's half PPR, which I never feel that you get a lot out of. But I'm going to have to go with Mr. 100%, David Johnson, in that long-winded answer.
Okay. This is a tough question, I think, especially, as Mike said, there are a lot of questions around David Johnson. He did practice fully on Thursday after a limited practice on Wednesday, so it looks like he's fully healthy. Like Mike said, David Johnson himself said he's 100%. But we don't really know how he's going to be used in this offense in the first game back. So that is what's a little bit scary. Of course, he's got a great matchup against Tampa Bay, like we talked about with Kyler Murray. And David Johnson is just a machine in the passing game as well as on the ground. So it's kind of tough to bench him. I think he's more of a boomer bust guy when compared to these other two between Ekeler and John Brown. But I think he was a top 5 pick for a reason in the draft. His talent's insane. This offense has just been getting better since the beginning of the year. So I'm also going to roll with David Johnson. But like I said, he's more of a risky option. So if you're trying to look for more of a floor, I would go with John Brown against the Cleveland Browns. But number 1 for me, I would play David Johnson if this was my choice.
And if David Johnson does not play, I would go John Brown if he's ruled out before the game starts.
Yeah.
Does Amir agree?
Agreed.
You agree with that? Okay.
Seriously, come on. Our viewers are smart enough to know to not play guys that are ruled out before Sunday.
I would monitor the situation.
With regard to Austin Ekeler, just kind of backtracking, they got a new OC last week. They fired Ken Hunt, and I think they're actually trying to feature Austin Ekeler. He had 12 carries, as you said, Amir. That was the most that he's had since he was the starter, and Melvin Gordon came back earlier week 5 against Denver. So I think he is going to be highlighted. That being said, if David Johnson plays, you have to play him. So this is going to be kind of a long roundabout answer, but don't play Austin Ekeler because of the chance to start David Johnson, right? Even if David Johnson is ruled out, I think the gap between Johnson and Ekeler is wider than the gap between Ekeler and Brown. So hold off on Ekeler this week. Play David Johnson, because if he does play, he's the better option. If he doesn't, John Brown is not far off from Austin Ekeler. So I will complete the sweep, and David Johnson's my pick as well.
Sweet, but that's the most like BS. That was like, oh, Ekeler's gonna be great. He's fantastic. They're featuring more in the offense, and then I'm gonna come up with this weird explanation for why you really shouldn't go with what I just said. That was very, very confusing.
I told you it was roundabout.
I
like Austin. I do like Austin Ekeler this week.
Yeah.
Oakland's a bad defense. It's a decent offense, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Bad defense. They're featuring Ekeler. I do like him. David Johnson has to be the pick if you're deciding between these guys. And right now, he's questionable, trending towards playing.
Yeah. Just one thing to know about Austin Ekeler. Last week, he had pretty much the perfect game script. Chargers were up big early, and they kind of just held on to that lead. I actually think Oakland's going to hang around a little bit. I do expect the Chargers to win this game, but I think it'll be pretty close throughout the game. So I'm not sure how many rush yards or rush attempts Austin Ekeler's going to get this week compared to last week.
Yeah.
Never know what scheme John Gruden's going to throw at you either.
Elite coaching from John Gruden each and every week.
Yep.
Nope, it was not John Gruden's defensive camp.
What?
This is quarterback camp.
Quarterback.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So we here at Between the 20s, we always do a couple pick twos. We like these a lot. It gives some more takes to the guys that we can really rank. This week we have a pick 3, and I like this one a lot. It's actually 5 different running backs. So assuming there's no 3 running back league, this is going to be 2 starting running backs and a flex.
Yep.
Hold on to your hat.
I would recommend doing that. This is going to be a whirlwind of a question. 5 different running backs that had really varying ADPs coming into the year, varying expectations, a couple injury concerns coming in. So let's get started. First, Monday night, Christopher Carson, against the San Francisco 49ers in San Fran, that phenomenal defense, but did give up some yards to Kyler Murray last week. He's the first option. Second, James Conner still dealing with an AC joint injury in his shoulder against the Rams. David Johnson, who we just spoke about, not much more to say. Austin Ekeler, who we also just spoke about, not much more to say there either. And lastly, another guy that I absolutely loved and touted, and he's finally getting the carries, Devin Singletary, down in Buffalo, or up in Buffalo, I should say, going to play in Cleveland at the Dog Pound.
East, but
Out in Buffalo,
East,
yeah.
Northeast, whoever you want to call it. But they're playing due east, from us anyway, in Cleveland, Ohio, against the Browns. He could have another big week. Amer, who are your top 3 guys?
he also just pointed west, by the way.
I'm going to start out with my first guy, and that's Chris Carson. If you've seen any of my videos, seen any of the videos on this channel, you know I'm a big proponent of Chris Carson. He's got one of the highest floors out of any running back. He gets a ton of carries every week. I think every week this year he's had above 15 carries, which is just insane for a running back. He's got really high floor. He always gets the rush yards you need. And if he can score a touchdown, he'll just make your fantasy week, and he'll win you a lot of weeks. So for me, Chris Carson is number 1. Although it's a tough defense against San Francisco, I think the volume is just too much to pass up. So Chris Carson would be my number 1 out of this list. I guess moving down to my number 2, it would be I think I'm going to go with David Johnson. We just talked about him a little bit, especially if he plays good offense against a bad defense in Tampa Bay. So not much more to say about David Johnson. And then my third guy would be kind of one of the dark horses. I'm going to go with Devin Singletary. That's pretty much just based on the matchup. I'm not a huge fan of the Browns this year. I was on their hype train coming into the season, especially on the offensive side. But I think the Bills are going to actually get up in this game, and you'll see a lot of rushing, and it'll be split between Frank Gore and Devin Singletary. But I do prefer Singletary just because he seems to have taken over this offense. He's really working well in the passing game and on the ground. So both sides of that. So for me, number 1 would be Chris Carson, number 2, David Johnson, and number 3 would be Devin Singletary. Just a note on James Conner, it looks like he's doubtful for this weekend, so keep an eye on that. I think even if he plays, he's a tough guy to start this weekend in your fantasy teams.
Definitely. Mikey, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to start my answer off by just confirming exactly what Amir said. James Conner is probably not the go-to this week. Very unfortunate for all of those who picked him in the first round, myself included. Stuck with a bit of a running back conundrum of my own, right?
Yeah.
Neither one of the guys I'm going to play is actually starting for their team. So there's that.
Fantasy expert Mike Vetter.
Tony Pollard, baby. Tony Pollard.
So, with that in mind, it comes down to these other four, and Amir just talked big about Chris Carson. I'm not sure if I feel the same. The San Francisco 49ers have a stellar defense, and I think that's going to leave him off the island for me.
What about Kenyon Drake? You think Kenyon Drake's more talented or in a better offensive
Clearly.
system than
Absolutely.
Chris Carson? Guys, come on.
It's a relatively
Mike,
hot
come on.
take, but I'm going to have to go with the trio of David Johnson, Austin Ekeler, and Devin Singletary.
Interesting. Well, as we all know, and as I said before, I am by far probably the biggest Devin Singletary proponent, but I'm the only one that's not going to take him.
Whoa.
I'm going to go Chris Carson. We saw what Kenyon Drake did last week, torched the 49ers in many different respects. David Johnson is a vastly better player with a better quarterback that's going to take some of the heat off of David Johnson too. The only thing I'm questioning is going to be his snap count. So, not sure. But I do like David Johnson this week. Chris Carson this week. I do like David Johnson as well. He's the other one.
Okay.
David Johnson is going to, I think, have a good week. I'm not really that worried about Kenyon Drake taking touches away. So, I do like him as the second one. And then I'm going to take Austin Ekeler. I did just talk him up previously. I think they're going to feature him. I do like him. The real issue that I have with Singletary is just I want to see him do it again. Last week, if you watched the show, I did like Devin Singletary because I thought they were going to go up big, which they did. The Bills against the Redskins. They're going to let Devin Singletary run the show, see what he has. So I want to see if this was actually them making him the number 1, making him the starter, or if this was them just feeling it out and seeing what they have. Given the Bills are a playoff team or a playoff contender, I do feel that this was the real deal. And Devin Singletary is going to be the number 1 moving forward, but I'm not confident playing him over Austin Ekeler at this juncture. If he does it again, if he gets 15 carries again, he might be a weekly play.
Oh, what do you think? Top 20 moving forward? You think so?
I might put him above David Montgomery.
Wow, big words from Bryce.
I just question exactly how you need proof of somebody to do it twice when they've clearly done it once well. Yeah, you stuck with O.J. Howard for 6 weeks with him doing zilch.
Oh man.
But I cut him.
Yeah.
Finally,
You got to cut bait after 6
Cut the
weeks.
cord.
Actually, I traded him for Golden Tate. I did
Trade
do that.
master.
I traded him for Golden Tate, who I might trade for Kyler Murray. So
That's
I
a good
might
call.
turn O.J. Howard into Kyler Murray. I'll take that any day of the week. That was our pick 3. That's the biggest question of the day, definitely.
Yeah.
We'll let you know how that goes next week, and you'll see how that goes for the rest of this week. 10-team PPR question. A guy that we all like, we reference a lot because he's Mike's doppelganger, DK Metcalf.
My man, DK.
DK Metcalf. He's going up against San Francisco. We've talked about Seattle a lot with Chris Carson. Question mark coming in, though, is going to be Josh Gordon. How is he going to be used? He is active. He's going to play. So it's now the Josh Gordon, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett show instead of just the 2 of them previously. Or guy that was below expectations for a while and has now turned it around somehow just out of nowhere. Marvin Jones in Detroit going up against a very tough Chicago Bear defense. Mike, who are you going with?
Well, as tough as the Bears defense is, the 49ers is still tougher. Best defense in the NFL in terms of yards per game allowed. Bears are ninth. Marvin Jones, hot commodity. I'm going to go with the hot hand of Marvin Jones. I feel that the Lions are really a passing team, I feel, especially now with the loss of Kerryon Johnson for the season. So I think that they're going to target Marvin Jones, who still is, yes, he's their second option there, but second option in offense, it's just a very high octane in terms of the passing game. And DK Metcalf, you really have to rely on him getting end zone targets. I mean, he had the classic game 2 weeks ago where he had 13 yards and 2 touchdowns, which saved fantasy owners' day, thankfully, for them. But I don't necessarily think that the Seahawks can get into the end zone that often against the 49ers. As good as their offense is, I mean, you kind of have to weigh that when thinking about this question. And so I'm going to go with Marvin Jones, definitely the higher floor of the two, I'd say. And I think Metcalf, the ceilings might be equal, but I still like Jones.
Yeah, this is a tough question. These guys are like right there in a lot of people's rankings, especially my rankings. These guys are like right next to each other. They both had pretty good seasons, I guess. Definitely picked it up in the past couple of weeks, both of these guys. And I'm still not exactly sure, but I think I'm going to shoot with Marvin Jones this week. Just because that, like Mike said, the Bears defense is a little bit worse than the 49ers. I know the Cardinals had a pretty decent day against them on the offensive side, but I don't know. I think the Niners are going to be back this week. They're going to really wake up for this divisional matchup against Seattle. So yeah, and of course, as Bryce mentioned, Josh Gordon's coming back. We don't really know how he's going to come in. I don't necessarily think either of these guys are bad options, but I just think that Marvin Jones is the clear number 2 on his team, and I think that the Lions are going to actually have to pass to stay in this game. So I'm going with Marvin Jones. But it's close.
Did you guys not see what DK Metcalf did last week?
Hey.
I know it was the Buccaneers. I know it went to overtime. I know it was a shootout. But the guy still had 7 targets, 6 catches, 9 targets. 9 targets.
They just
6
keep increasing.
catches, 123 yards.
And a touchdown.
And that's going to now be 3 touchdowns over his last 2 games. He's definitely someone Russell Wilson, I almost said Russell Westbrook. Russell Wilson likes to look to in the end zone. I like his upside here. Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay is the guy. He's been spectacular this year. He's a top 20, top 15 potentially even receiver. The Niners' corners aren't fantastic. The reason the Niners' defense is so good is because Richard Sherman is great, but he'll be on Tyler Lockett, and their pass rush is second to none. Fantastic. But the rest of their secondary leaves a little bit to be desired. I don't think Josh Gordon's going to take that much away. I think DK Metcalf's going to be a focal point, and we know Russell Wilson's a magician. The guy can escape any kind of pass rush, even Nick Bosa's. I think that he's going to look for DK Metcalf, and this is going to be at least the Seahawks are going to have to throw to at least move the ball a little bit.
Yeah, just one thing about Richard Sherman. He does play on the outside, and Tyler Lockett's more of a slot guy. So it might not be a complete shadow with Richard Sherman. He is definitely an outside guy. So DK, I think, is actually going to pick up some coverage from Richard Sherman. So something to watch for moving into this game. But we'll see. Both good options.
Definitely.
I have heard at some point that he's the best corner in the game.
I'm the best corner in the game.
Yeah, about 5 years ago.
Circa 2014.
2014, 2013, yeah. Well back.
He should really be a free safety now. He's the best zone guy in the league, maybe still. He should be a free safety.
Hot takes.
That's what you should do in Madden, actually. If you have Madden and you're using the 49ers, make Richard Sherman a free safety. He's like a 96.
All right.
That is assuming that you're decent at that.
Unlike
you
Mike.
Wasted your money on this year's edition of Madden.
Also true. Last question of the day.
Because we're not getting any Madden advertisements anytime soon.
We're not getting any kind of sponsorships anytime soon.
Oh, boy.
Hey, Madden, if you want to sponsor us, I love your game. Don't worry.
Last question is a 10-team standard. Looking at a flex here again.
I mean, you can't get any better than putting Tom Brady on the cover.
Hey, what about the cover curse, man? Knock on wood.
It's true. It's true. Tom Brady.
It's real. The Madden cover curse is 100% real. We don't have to go through it right now, but
it's regression
it is
is
real.
mean.
I'm a big Peyton Hillis fan, but
hey, it even hit Antonio Brown.
Aye. Are we good?
Yeah, keep going.
Last question of the day. 10-team standard. Looking at a flex spot here. We talked about Seattle. Now we're moving to San Francisco. Same game, other side. Matt Breida, one of their two main timeshare running backs with him and Tevin Coleman. Stephon Diggs against Dallas. Tough matchup, but Adam Thielen is out. Stephon Diggs is the true number one this week. Or, we've talked about him before, DJ Moore going up against Green Bay once again. We'll talk about him for the final time here. Amer, just to pick one with these three guys.
If we're just picking one, I am, again, just like last week, in a roll with Stephon Diggs. I know Stephon Diggs had a tough weekend last week against, who did they play last week?
The Chiefs.
Against the Chiefs.
The bad
Yeah, against the bad Chiefs.
Chiefs.
That was just a weird
Defense.
game.
With no Adam Thielen.
That was
Adam
just a
Thielen
weird game.
Gets on the field in the first quarter.
Nope.
Hamstring.
I don't want to hear this
He's
Stephon
out.
Diggs hate. Stephon Diggs going to have a good week this
Stephon
week.
Diggs with 3.1 non-PPR, right? No, PPR points last week.
I don't want to hear this slander against Stephon Diggs. He's playing Dallas. The strength of their defense is in their linebacking core. And if they try to put a linebacker on Stephon Diggs, he's going to eat, obviously. But they're going to put their secondary, their safeties, their corners on him. And I think he's going to do well. I don't think Dallas has a particularly good secondary. And this is going to be a shootout, I actually think. Both teams have good offenses. So I think Minnesota's going to need to throw. Watch for a big game from Dalvin Cook, as usual. And I think the main target in the passing game is going to be Stephon Diggs for the Minnesota Vikings. So rolling with Stephon Diggs. Matt Breida's not a terrible play. Seattle doesn't have a great defense this year. And that run game in San Francisco is really good. But I think Stephon Diggs, higher upside, higher floor. He's going to get more work. So rolling with Stephon Diggs.
Also, it depends on the distribution of carries, I should say, in San Francisco, which is a big variable.
Of course.
But while Amer made it sound nice, let's got to face the facts here. We love the facts here. Hosts of Mike's Math, in case you want to check it out. We are big into the numbers. Anyway, last week, Stephon Diggs put up 3.1 points per game. 3.1 points per game in one game, sure. Against the 22nd ranked Kansas City Chiefs defense. And then people come back and they say, oh, this week, look, Adam Thielen's out.
What did you do the week before, Mike?
Adam Thielen's out, but Adam Thielen was basically out for all of last game as well when he exited in the first quarter. Adam Thielen owners, myself, I apologize. It was rough. Rough week for us. Basically 0 on the fantasy chart. If you won, the rest of your team must be very good, better than mine. Anyway, so now that we've cleared that out of the way, let's talk about the Dallas defense. So once again, let's remember, Chiefs 22nd best defense, the Dallas defense 6th best defense.
That's overall defense,
No
not pass
Leighton Vander
defense.
Esch. No Leighton
No
Vander
Leighton
Esch.
He's
Vander
out. Sean Lee.
Sean Lee, the other guy that
Jalen
makes it
Smith.
play, exactly. Their defense is very good. They beat the Giants up the other day, relatively
That's the
easily.
Giants.
That's
You
the
guys
Giants.
know.
But speaking of bad teams and bad defenses, we have the opponent of DJ Moore. Not necessarily a bad team. I take that back. But bad defense. The Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers struggle defensively there. The 26th ranked defense. And that's even after the first game of the season where they only let up 3 points to the Bears. So, basically since then, it's been very bad defensively. With that in mind, I'm going to have to go DJ Moore. I think he is your play this week. DJ Moore.
No, Amer's right. It's Stephon Diggs. Sorry to be blunt, but it's Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is the true number one option on this team. The Dallas rush defense is also very, very good. Their front seven is spectacular. Their secondary, Chidobe Awuzie is pretty good there as a free safety, but he is the guy for Kirk Cousins this week. Kirk Cousins is, I think, gonna have a little bit of a bounce back. It wasn't terrible last week, but just didn't target Stephon Diggs all that much. He did hit Kyle Rudolph, which was crazy.
Don't see that every day.
No, in the end zone, no less.
Yeah.
But Stephon Diggs, yes, he only had one catch, but he did have 5 targets. That's still more than the majority of weeks he had before he exploded against Philadelphia. So I still think he's a focal point. It's just going to be a matter of, can he catch those targets? I think he will. Each of the last 3 weeks before he played Kansas City, he caught over 50% of his balls. I actually think it was over 60% of all his targets. So he usually is pretty short-handed. I do like him this week to bounce back. They are going to have to throw the ball against Dallas. They're actually coming in as underdogs into Dallas, 3-point underdogs. So Minnesota to hang is going to have a nice mix of Dalvin Cook and Stephon Diggs. DJ Moore, I just can't get past the Jair Alexander shadow. That's really it. He is unbelievable.
Yeah, just after, one thing on Stephon Diggs, just after that brutal start those first 3 weeks, 4 out of the past 6 weeks he's had 7 receptions for more than 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been pretty consistent actually for the past 6 weeks. So I think you can roll him out. Full confidence, top 15 guy this week.
Yep. Not only that, the 3 weeks before his dud against Kansas City, 140 yards or more. That's a ton.
Yeah.
If in case you're not following football, that's a lot of yards. All on 7 or more targets and 7 or more catches, obviously. So I think he's a solid play.
I don't know what to say to that. I feel like I'm ganged up on here. I think I made a good pick.
As usual, we
try.
disagree with Mike. Let us know what you think. I'm sure you agree with us, but
In case you're not, you wouldn't be aware, we haven't told you the standings yet, but we do have some percentage points here. Over the year so far, I'm in the lead at first with 55%.
Oh, he brings it up.
He's
He
trying
brings
to
it up.
flex.
The 1 week he's on top.
He's trying to flex.
55.5%. Amir's in second at 52%. Then there's Michael.
So
Michael is picking at 41%.
I bring up all these. If you take all the 6 weeks before today, Stephon Diggs had.
4 out of 6 weeks.
You know how many
7
times
receptions.
DJ Moore has gotten 3.1 points or less? 0!
How many times has he eclipsed?
No caveats
14.
needed. No caveats.
How many times
Does
has he eclipsed
DJ Moore have a
14?
touchdown this year? I don't think DJ Moore has a touchdown. Oh, he's got one.
3,
He's got one.
4 times. He's eclipsed.
One touchdown.
Oh, I like DJ Moore play this week. The Cowboys defense is good. The Packers,
No,
not
it's
so
not.
much.
Christian McCaffrey's option 1 and 2 on this offense.
Greg Olsen, you could argue, is 3.
You could.
DJ Moore, folks.
No.
DJ Moore. And if
Stephon
DJ
Diggs.
Moore wins, oh man, these guys are going to feel.
Stephon Diggs. But thank you all for watching. This has been the Week 10 edition of Start Sit. As always, please use the links up here to Instagram and Twitter. DM us. Let us know what you think about this. Ask us your questions for next week. Comment here on this video. Tell us what you think. If you agree, disagree, or anything else, if you have any more questions to ask us. We're here between the 20s to answer all of your questions. Until next time, I'm Bryce. He's Amir. He's Mike. See you next time.